saying, I want to introduce my wife. She's the Lagana. Right? So there was a Ute lady that spoke. She was half Ute and half Navajo, which was a bad combination. The Navajos, the enemies to the Navajos are the Ute, and of course vice versa, depending on what lenses you're looking through, right? Well, I said, this is my wife. She's the Lagana. So as I was walking out the door after we did the presentation, she grabbed my arm. She says, "Don't ever call your wife that way, Lagana. Tell her that it's somebody that you walk with." I said, "No, this is the correct word." I said, "We fight every morning." So iron, what is it? Iron sharpens iron, right? And if you heard of the story of David and Goliath, I did a series of connection between Hebraic in comparison with Navajo traditional religions. And so I spent I don't know how many years, and so it actually went to Israel. And a lot of the rabbinicals said, "Hey, this guy is making some connections that we need to look at." But long story short, Shelley, as we were looking at this, there's a lot of things that are coming into fruition. COVID, the climate crisis. There's a pivotal moment taking place, and things are starting to surface that were sort of beneath the surface. In terms of cultures, in terms of things that we need to do, we need to activate our activism, so to speak, right? And I just hear in the spirit realm that many of you are activists, and right now is really the Creator's calling a lot of those folks out. And it's amazing how we presented this stuff like 6-7 years ago, and just now people are starting to say, "Hey, we need to listen to this guy. He's been on the bench. We need to get him out on the playing field in court, start discussing some of these in conversation." That's where it all begins, in conversation. But to go back to David and Goliath, I'll jump around, excuse me. When David was getting the stones, and to us, stones, to the general public or Western worldview or European philosophers, stones are considered things that are not living, right? What's the word they use? Yeah, inanimate. But to David, it was a sign when this big, huge giant was approaching and really intimidating the culture of what we call sustainability or self-sufficiency. So he goes to the river where the water's been flowing, and these stones have been rubbing against each other for a long time, and they became smooth. And some of you have been rubbed for quite a while. If you're an elder and getting up in age, you get up slower. Things don't quite move as fast. Your mind is already there, but your body slowly follows. So you've been rubbed in a certain way for the purpose of this hour. And I really feel that even the young people are starting to pick up the stone, which I call the elder culture concept. They're starting to get there because we have, in our generation of who we are, have not handed anything over to a lot of the young people. All we've done is handed them over deficiencies, crises, things that, like even just with the shooting that's going on everywhere, it's become such a normal daily ritual to look at TV and all this information. And nobody's really making these connections. Could it be that we are eating foods that are contaminated and it's affecting our critical thinking? Could it be that our foods don't have the nutrient density like they used to in the 50s? They tasted better. Now we're eating cardboard. We're looking at like tomatoes that look good, have the volume, but it's mostly carbohydrates. And we've dumbed down things like tomatoes to where you can't get a good tomato anymore that has thick skin. It's soft and it looks good. And we run to Walmart because they harvest them, like even apples, when they're green, and they gas them So by the time he gets to the grocery store, it doesn't have the nutrient density. They say you take a tomato that is just ripe, there's hairs on those tomatoes. As soon as you pick it, those hairs disappear as soon as you bring them into the house. That's how nutrient levels deplete. So by the time we get the foods on our table, we might as well, not have the nutrient levels that our bodies need. So could it be it's affecting what I call biocosmology, layers and layers of it? Well, get back to Goliath and David. So these stones are rubbing against each other, smoothed out, and he knew exactly. He went to the riverbed and picked those stones. He didn't pick those stones that were sharp and laying around. He picked those stones that rubbed against each other the wrong way. And so he picks it up and uses it for the purpose of bringing down a Goliath. Right now we have a Goliath in front of us. It's the kind of technology and the kind of agriculture that we're doing that is so huge that the government has to subsidize it. So for people like us that are backyard gardeners, nobody really cares. Nobody really gives it about it, right? So what you're doing is really activating your activism. And that's what really I want to make sure that you have the tools and the knowledge that are indigenous knowledge of 40,000 years of knowledge that we have as indigenous people, but we're marginalized. What we have is agriculture that you can run to Home Depot and pick up, like artificial synthetic fertilizer, and then you apply it. And then when you want to go natural, the following year, you'll see all these bugs appear because the bugs understand a lot of this concept of the microbiome and the biology that are at work. And so what we want to do is connect you to what is the microbiome in your soil, what is the microbiome in your gut, what is the microbiome all around us that is much heavier than human beings. A handful of that compost that we make has got the same population as what's human beings on the earth. Can you imagine that? It's hard to imagine. And we haven't honored much of what's underneath our feet. Those bugs live and die for us. But we have not heard anybody say, do we honor these relations, these sacred space, these microbiome that we are connected. So indigenous people understand that. But the same as everybody else, we have been colonized. Colonized, you just define it in a very simple form as extraction. There's no reciprocity. You pull, you keep pulling, and there's no this give and take. So one of the things that I forgot to do, sorry, I'm such a colonized native, is I didn't bring gifts for you all. And that's usually the first protocol is to exchange gifts in that way. And I'm sure we're going to exchange some things in a different format than just the physical, right? Hopefully. So, Joyce, you want to share a little bit of yourself and before we jump in?
Yeah, I grew up on a farm. My dad had tons of pigs, and he's moved into cattle, but we always had a 2-acre garden, and it was always done naturally. And then when the word organic comes in, it's like, what? I guess we've always, it was a whole new term when we came in. And so, but when I moved, and I grew up in Pennsylvania, so when I moved out to New Mexico, I tried growing stuff. I couldn't grow anything. And it's because we had all the water we needed and good soil, because the moisture really creates a lot of that good soil, And so one year we started growing, and it was the first year we really got into making compost. And we took a load of compost and dumped it on our cabbages, and boom, they just went like that so fast. And so we knew we were onto something, onto some secrets and natural things. And so we just began that journey of every year just learning a little bit more. And I think all of you know, one year, I was talking to Morgan earlier, you make a mistake, and it's like it takes a whole new year for you to try something different, or to really apply